Hello and welcome. The Oscar-winning Back to the Future. Was it directed by Bob Zemeckis, or, in fact, was it directed by Stephen Spielberg, who was the film's executive producer? Just who really had the creative control while shooting the film was a question speculated on during and shortly after the 1985 film was released. And who was the actor playing Marty McFly for 6 weeks of the initial filming? Because it wasn't Michael J. Fox, who went on to become a worldwide movie star because of his performance in the film. Well, Bob has had a long career in Hollywood as a director, writer and producer. He's directed the much-loved Forrest Gump, Romancing the Stone, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Castaway, among more than 30 other films. Back then, I had the chance to sit down with Bob shortly after the film was released and find out the answers to both of those questions. And during our chat, Bob also talked about the role of the controversial DeLorean gull-winged car and how he and Michael juggled shooting schedules with Michael's role in the hit TV series Family Ties.
Well, firstly, just to clarify, I mean, everybody's been asking me, and I can't entirely give them an answer. I mean, I've given them a voluntary answer. What role did Steven Spielberg actually play? His name appears above the credits and so on.
Well, he plays a his role is very classically in this film the executive producer. He does exactly what his title suggests, which is he's there for the very early, broad creative decisions that have to be made. You know, he's in on casting or major script changes. Naturally, the most important decisions are those concerning money. And then what he does is he supplies this very efficient staff of people under the umbrella of his company who work with you through the making of the film in the very, very online producing kind of things, and then he creates this very comfortable atmosphere that you're left completely alone to go do your film. And
so
but then at the end, of course, he's there to do what is the most important thing, which is to make decisions on how the film will be marketed and opened, which is half the battle.
Yeah. So coming back to that creative, first creative input, I mean, and applying it to this particular film, what creative input did he have? I mean, did he in fact serve to get you and Bob to change the story, the structure, the character?
Oh no, not at all. He would make suggestions. He would make suggestions very early on. One suggestion was to always maintain the warm relationship between the professor and the kid. He would, when we would suggest to cut something or to expand on something, we would write it, and then he would have to read it and look at it, and he would, just make little directorial. Like when we do the major action sequences, we always do storyboards, and he would glance at those, and then just call up and say, "Are you going to have a close up of this of his hand?" Window? Yes, of course, Stephen. Oh, good, and that kind of thing. And then he would stop in on dailies a couple times a week and look at how the film was looking, and. But I think he was total on the set maybe 3 hours, just sort of there as a just he's there for the opening day and there for the wrap, and he would come around and give the actors moral support.
Right. Now, well, I guess what we're asking in a sense is, do you as an independent personality feel that at times it was sort of Spielberg by remote control in a sense? Did he intrude that far into?
Oh no, never at all. He's certainly the history of Stephen and this project goes back to when Bob and I first wrote the screenplay about 4.5 years ago, and he absolutely was the only person in Hollywood who wanted to make it instantly, but I didn't want to do that specifically for the reason that you just suggested. So that's why I wanted to put a film between another film that I would do with Stephen.
Because you feared that
Only
there may
I
have been
feared
a sort of
if it were commercially unsuccessful, that would be very detrimental to my career. So I did Romancing the Stone, and then I wanted to do Back to the Future, so I thought it only was appropriate and fair to go back and do it with Stephen, who now by this time had in fact established, and his name had become this sort of symbol for you associate his name with a certain quality film. And I felt that Back to the Future embodied all those qualities that his name represents. So it worked out perfectly. It worked out well for us because I think it's good that his name is on the film, and it worked out good for Stephen and his company, because now they have another hit movie under their belt.
And you don't feel that it's taken anything away from
No,
Bob
because
Zemeckis?
I mean, obviously, if someone out in, it's not going to disturb me if there's someone out in Sydney, Australia, who for some reason thinks that Stephen directed the film. The media, and obviously the international media, and the U.S. media, and all the people in the industry know that I directed the film, so that's really all that's important to me. I mean, it's not important that I recognized all across the world as a director, as long as they're going to see the film.
Yes, that's it.
Right.
Pay the money at the box office, we'll be happy.
Right.
So what went wrong with Eric Stoltz? Why wasn't he just getting the character?
Well, it wasn't a question. He didn't do anything wrong. I mean, he didn't not get the character, or he didn't do anything. There was no problem with him in a classic Hollywood sense of the word. I just felt that after assembling the film, and because he hadn't been doing anything wrong, no one really knew. But after I started to assemble the film together, I just felt that his performance was a bit too intense, and it wasn't because of his performance, because that could be changed, because he's a very good actor. It's just that there's a certain maturity or a certain wisdom that people have, that the camera sees, that is behind the eyes, so to speak, that is a truth that comes through that I couldn't figure out any way to deal with, because I felt that the character had to be together very much in the classic leading man sense, so that you identify with him, but then also have the ability to exude a great vulnerability that you believe he could be in this situation, in this mess.
And Stoltz was giving you what then? He was giving you
a very, very much of a mature kind of presence, which had nothing to do with acting. I couldn't begin to give direction to someone to do what it was that I needed. So I found myself with a very good actor cast in the wrong role.
How did he take it when you came to him and said, "Look"?
Well, obviously he was devastated by it, and he took it. I mean, how well can anyone take these things? I mean, obviously he was very, very distraught, but and it was the worst thing that I ever had to do. But it was something that I felt, I think it would have been more detrimental both to the film and to his career to end up with something that would be confusing ultimately as the final product, and it would then possibly reflect negatively on all parties involved.
So what happens? Does he get actually paid off, or just paid up to the point where he worked?
Oh no, he's paid off.
He's paid off.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, yeah.
It's been very hard. I don't.
Yes, yeah. I don't want to. I would never want to do it again. Never. No, never.
So let's talk about some happier things, like what happened. I'm not sure whether it was in the production notes. It probably was in there, as well as a couple of the interviews that I've read from overseas. But you understandably were very pleased with Michael for his physical effort
Yes.
in staying alive.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
I mean, did it in fact produce problems where he'd come off one set and onto yours? I mean, being tired, being sort of not quite into the character, or
Oh, no. I mean, the problems were inherent in the way we had to work around him physically. But Michael, I mean, he's a very, very fit and young man and very full of energy. So he was great. He's very hard on himself. I mean, he's very hard on himself. He really, always is wanting, he's when he does something absolutely great, he doesn't believe that it's great. That kind of very difficult on himself. So, and when you saw that he was tired, he'd say, "Oh no, I'm not tired. I'm fine. Let's just do it again. Let's keep doing it again." So he never ever didn't just come in and be full of energy and ready to go. It was difficult on us, the crew and the cast, and I think Michael did a terrific job on working under the conditions that he had to. As a matter of fact, he said to me, "Wow, I can't wait to do the sequel because now I'm finally into the kid. I know who the character," because he had to come in and switch back and forth. And the producers of his other show were very good to us too. They let us change his hair and do things mid-season like that, so it was very nice. But he was great, but we have to give as much credit to the rest of the cast too, because they had to work around him too.
So you must have just had to change your schedules out of day. Was it a lot of day shoots changed into
night shoots? Right, and that was very hard on the crew, because here we're making the crew work at midnight, lighting sets to look like daytime. It's like we had to work nights when we should have been working days. So it was tough all the way around.
What about some of the sequences that, for instance, the car? Oh, well, first let me ask you about the DeLorean. I mean, was it always from the original screenplay, the idea to have a DeLorean in there?
No, it wasn't. As a matter of fact, in the original screenplay, the time machine didn't go back into time with the Traveler. It was a different device. And that, when we started to get very serious about making the movie, and what Bob and I do is we just scrutinize the script. We found that it was kind of coincidental, that we had asked the audience to accept a lot of magical coincidences to allow the time machine's existence back in time, and it was just a lot of things. So we said, well, let's take the time machine with us. And then it became, instantly the time machine was then based on the original H.G. Wells time machine, which was a sled. And we just sat around and said, well, if we were to build a time machine today, it would definitely be a vehicle, because you want to be able to move it. So then the next thought was it had to be a car, and then after that we started to say, well, now how can we get some jokes in here? And then that led to the DeLorean with the gull-wing doors and that sort of thing. So it sort of evolved out of that.
But who came up with the DeLorean? Who was it actually thought of it?
Well, I guess I'll have to take credit for thinking of the DeLorean. Yeah.
Why? What was it? What was the joke that you saw?
The joke was the idea that the farm family would look at this thing and think that it was a flying saucer, and the DeLorean was the only car around that had hatch-like gull-wing doors, and the fact that it's stainless steel made it look exactly like something that fell out of space.
Is it easy to get your hands on a DeLorean these days, I suppose? Practically giving them away, are they?
Yeah, well, actually, it wasn't too tough then. I think it's tougher now to get a DeLorean now that the film is out. But then we went through 3 DeLoreans in the making of the film. So we.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, you always have to have we had one that. We had 2 basic DeLoreans that were outfitted, because you always have to have a backup, because every time you make a film, for some reason, picture cars. One evening, the stuntman missed his mark and ripped a tire off, the car, and so you always have to then roll out the B car. And then we had one that was able to be completely dismantled so that we could mount cameras for the interior and things like that. So it was one that was actually torn apart and bolted back together.
And the third one?
Those were the three.
Oh,
one was a mock-up that could be torn apart,
Oh, right.
and then there were the two running DeLoreans that we used for all the fast driving.
Right. Well, I suppose John DeLorean now is damning the fact that he...
Oh, he was very sweet. He wrote me a letter last week.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, he was great. He wrote a letter. He said he saw the film and he wanted to thank us for immortalizing his car, and he also said that the artists who designed the car, he said, could come and work for his new design team anytime. He offered him jobs.
Well, is he still? I mean, just
well, he's going to go back into the car business, as I understand. That's the latest I've heard. Yeah.
So what do you pay for it, just as a matter of curiosity?
Oh, a DeLorean?
Pay for a DeLorean these days?
I think we paid about 18 or 19,000 for ours each.
Is that an inflated price because of the rarity element?
No, it's very inexpensive.
So, what about in just the physical shooting of any interesting or amusing offbeat stories?
Well, not too many. No, not too many. It was pretty much other than the fact that we had to work in this ridiculous schedule, that was probably the most offbeat thing that we in fact had to do. But other than the typical things of getting rained on, snowed on, all these things, it was pretty smooth sailing. Thank goodness. Yeah, believe it or not, one night in the shopping mall, it actually snowed in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles,
yeah. Mm-hmm. It got that cold that it didn't stick on the ground, but we had to shut down because you can't have it snowing.
No. And all the fast turns and starting and everything, there was no problems with those at all.
You mean in the car?
In the car.
Oh yeah, constant. Those were all made in the editing room because the car doesn't have a lot of handling. In other words, if in fact the car does not handle, it has a Lotus type frame, which bends, so all the torque in the car sort of was delivered into the frame itself, so it doesn't perform well for that sort of stressful driving. So it was sort of done piecemeal.
So what you see was not really what you got.
No, it was all designed in the editing. It would be very hard to take a DeLorean and really squirrel around with it. It's got this very, very small Volvo engine in it.
On the story itself, because it was interesting going back and seeing it yesterday, because time expands a little bit when you see something for a second and a third time and so on. So you see, not only do you get all the extra jokes and so on, but you see other things. When they come back to supposedly the present day, and he wakes up and he goes out, and here they are all in there looking smarter and much more trendy. How do we account for that jump?
Well, I think that what happens is that it's sort of basically the entire sort of premise of the film, which is that one moment of courage can possibly change a man's entire life. And so the idea is that the father, having been inspired by the son to stand up to Biff in the 50s, sort of changed both he and Biff's life in the 30 years that followed.
Bob is 73 now and still has a heavy workload writing, directing and producing. One of his next films stars Dwayne Johnson in The King as King Kamehameha, the legendary king who was the first to unite the warring clans of the Hawaiian Islands. And that should be a spectacular movie, and Dwayne says it's been his dream movie project ever since coming to Hollywood.